have written about his death in the past tense or future tense. He wrote about suspense, and so was his death. And then, of course, there was the life he lived. Welcome to Edgar Allan Poe and how to write a love letter like him, but first, let's introduce him. Edgar Allan Poe. Before he was a man, he was a kid whose mom died when he was 2 years old, and his father had left beforehand. He started his life as a literary critic. Started writing at age 13 and never stopped. It just got more intense. He went to university in Virginia and then thought, you know what, I'm gonna start gambling to get money. Instead of getting more money to pay off his debt for university, he became more broke and then had to stop studying there and instead studied somewhere else. I said he was a little bit better than the other poets. I did not say he was perfect. Let's talk about his death. He was traveling to one state, and then a week later he was found on the street of a distant state in a tavern, drunk and wearing clothes that did not belong to him. They took him to the hospital, and a couple of days later he died. No one knows what killed him. He wrote horror. He also wrote poetry. He wrote tons of genres, but one of the genres he was writing was horror. And his death seemed to reflect that pretty well. This is not funny. It's just, I have to talk about this. It's just so interesting how writers' lives and their writing coincide so well, sometimes intentionally. Like Kafka, yes. Father was a mess, yes. Writing was not a mess, but it reflected the type of mess that his father was in his writing, yes. But Edgar Allan Poe, wrote, and then in the future, he died that way. He didn't die exactly how he wrote, but the fact that he died in a way where nobody knows what he died of, that's weird. That is weird. He also lived in the Romantic era, but in the darker side of it. It's also interesting because obviously Lord Byron lived in the Romantic era, but Lord Byron he traveled, but he lived in England for a time being. He is British. I believe Goethe has some overlap with the Romantic era, but he was in multiple eras. And then I also believe that, what's his name? You know which one I mean? Victor Hugo, there we go. I'm not good with names, but I could have said the Frenchman, but that would have been a little weird. You're like, which one? There's quite a few. Also lived in the Romantic era. So I always think it's really interesting the juxtaposition between, they're living in the same era, yes, they're living in different countries, but their writing could not be further from each other. The genres, the things they're exploring, the topics. I also find it equally as interesting, and it's completely the opposite, when you look at, when was something invented? And it was invented at the same time in different places. And so it almost feels like there is a time for the birth of an invention, and that it kind of has to be born everywhere. I don't know how to explain it, but there's like the momentum of ideas, and then at some point it's like, okay, now. And then it's now, but in different places as well. So he was engaged to his first love, but they did not get married, and then he married his cousin. You know, it's bad with poets when the guy who married his cousin still seems to stand out as the moral high ground. I mean, not moral high ground, but he's doing better than Lord Byron. But everyone is doing better than Lord Byron in most senses, but not all. But not all. Except the cousin thing, which yes is bad enough, I absolutely agree, but we can't get stuck on that. I mean, Lord Byron married his sister, I believe. I wish I did not believe that. But yeah, his love life was pretty, was engaged, then broke it off, was with someone, then broke it off. It was very normal. Yes, except the cousin thing, I absolutely agree. But so far, I mean, compare him to other poets, granted he only lived to 40, that did not stop Lord Byron. Lord Byron did not live long. But he had time. He's like, I got the time to mess around with everyone. Anyways, and so it's interesting. I was quite happy to research his love life, first because there was not a lot of scandal, and second because it was quite cohesive. It was easy to read. Yes, that makes for less of a story, less of juicy details like you had with Lord Byron for sure, but I think it's also nice when someone, I don't know, is doing okay. Sure, the thing with him is he had a lot of difficulty early in life. He was adopted, and not in the sense of, oh, he was a baby and was adopted. No, he was 2 years old already. His mom died, his dad left. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of that already. Like, his inclination to write horror might be from the place of, like, life already was a horror so young. I always think it's interesting. Okay, let's talk about it. Horror and these kind of genres, the darker genres, why people are pulled towards them. And someone was saying something of, ooh, I've got some gossip to tell you about Absolute Strangers. Yes, I eavesdrop. Sue me. So I was in Barnes and Nobles. I do eavesdrop, and I am aware that other people eavesdrop. That's why I don't have like conversations in public that I wouldn't want eavesdropped on. So, or when you're like in the subway and you're like, what is it saying? Or when you hear half of a conversation, like someone's on the phone and you only hear one sentence, you're like, I want to know more, but I can't. Okay, I eavesdrop. I do. Anyways, so I was in Barnes and Nobles, and this girl was talking about dark romance books and why she's pulled, not why she's pulled to them, but she really likes them. And then she said, I don't know if it's related to her or not, but she said, you know, I think the reason that people like dark romance, because the guy she was like working with was kind of like confused what the appeal of it is, and she was explaining it to him, and she's like, you know what I think why people like dark romance, and I've also heard this somewhere, and he was like, what? She said, because people who have really been traumatized have this open loop of the trauma but not the resolution. And through reading books that touch back to these like darker themes that society and people don't really want, that's my interpretation, I'm adding stuff, but she's the bones, I'm the meat, I'm adding stuff to it, don't really want to discuss these things. They don't want to discuss death. They don't want to discuss heartbreak. They do, but not in the real way of like, this completely destroyed me, or this completely like, we like emotions within a range. Like I think most people, there was an interesting, okay, I guess I'm jumping everywhere. There was an interesting thing which was like the 72-degree man or something of the sort. And it was saying that when you go one up, it's too hot. When you go one low, it's too cold. And I actually don't remember what the conclusion was. I think it was negative though, in the sense of it's not a positive thing that you're so used to one thing that you can never really go even just a little bit up and a little bit down. And I think it is the same case with emotions. We've gotten very comfortable with this range, and yes, the range is expanding because of rage bait and people being very vulnerable on the internet, but the range is still there. And then you tip over that range and you can't stand it. And sure, on the internet maybe you don't want to, but I think even in real life, I think everyone has like a cap to how much depth they can take at any given time. Sure, if you're more free and if you're having more time and you have more energy, you can do more. If you're not, you can do less, sure. But anyways, getting back to the point, she was saying they have this open loop that nobody wants to talk about because it's not fun and you can't help it. And they get to close this loop multiple times through different stories. So they'll gravitate towards a story that has the type of trauma they experienced, but they read different endings. And I find that so interesting. I don't know if that's true. That does ring true. Do I think it's for everyone the case? No, I think some people just like that genre. But it would make sense why it's such a popular genre and what the appeal of it is. Because you get the appeal of fantasy. You get the appeal of fantasy series because you're like, into another world, because this one kind of sucks. I love this world. What a vague statement. I do, but sometimes you're like, okay. So you get, I get the appeal of fantasy. The appeal of the darker things like horror or that was really, really confusing to me. So, you know, sometimes eavesdropping is great. I mean, if you see me, don't eavesdrop, but, you know, with other people. How do we write a love letter like Edgar Allan Poe? Before we do that, how do you know if you're like Edgar Allan Poe? If you are someone that's critical, because he was really harsh in his criticism of other people's art. And if you are someone that experienced difficult things in the past, but kind of moves through them, you really get the impression with Edgar Allan Poe that he moves through them. Whereas with Lord Byron, he kind of dances through them. He kind of like makeup removing through them. Like, he's not really going through them, he's acknowledging them, but like, for example, Lord Byron had a clubbed foot, and so he wouldn't dance, and so he would be at the back of the party and be like, and he would be kind of the one who coined the word cool, because he would just be too cool to dance. Meanwhile, he really couldn't dance, but he would just kind of play it off as that. It's like the person, I have dyslexia, it's like the person who has dyslexia who then is just like, I don't read. Yes, you can take that route, but maybe you want to just learn how to read better and faster, and that's a skill you can develop. And that's the difference between like moving through and dancing through. And dancing through sounds better, moving through is better, my opinion. How to write a love letter like him, let's get into it. So we're gonna read from his poems and tell you how to write like him. 1. Years of love has been forgotten in the hatred of a minute. Write about the parts of them you would never forget, even if they died in a fight. They're like, they died in a fight. No. Even if the part of them would die. So in a fight, so for example, let's say it's someone's kindness. That's a pretty easy example. They're so kind, they're so sweet. They're probably not kind and sweet in an argument. Let's assume, okay? Talk about that. I can't forget your kindness even in an argument. Now, please don't like, if that's not true, don't write that, okay? Don't like, oh, you're so kind, I won't even forget in an argument, and they're like the worst in an argument. Don't lie, like that, especially all the time. But especially in this specific love letter, because you're shooting yourself in the foot, like, that's not gonna be good for you if they're like, oh, I'm so kind, even in an argument. Meanwhile, they're like, how much would you buy? Like, no, okay? This is an example. It can also be their sense of humor. It can be something else, but something that even when you're fighting is so clear. There are people who really argue with kindness, and you can see that. Or they're really funny, or you have to know the person you're writing about. I can't tell you more than the prompts and the examples because you have to know who it is. Second quote. Tell me every terrible thing you did and let me love you anyway. Tell them how impressive it is to see their history and see how they have changed what it means through their meaning. There are a lot of people who have gone through, and this is the most fascinating thing about the human condition, except all of the other things that are fascinating, is people can go through the exact same thing and come out completely different people. Completely different people. Literally, okay, I'll give you an easy example. Someone can be in a household with an alcoholic, and like 2 people, and one can come out and never drink, and one can come out and become an alcoholic. I find that so weird. And sure, there's something to be said of like, that's actually the same reaction, just different extremes. Okay, Mrs. Smarty Pants in the back, you're right. But it is still different. Even if it's the same extremes, it is still different things, you know what I mean? And I find that so interesting. And so seeing what someone has been through and how they manage, if they've been through anything difficult and they've managed to come out softer, kinder, smarter, harder working, whatever the thing is, I think that is such an impressive thing to be able to go through and have it not break you. And this doesn't get said enough, but it is the normal and unfortunate reaction to something really horrible is that it breaks you. And there's not like, it's so difficult because it is so praiseworthy when someone does come through it and does do really well, but it is not shame-worthy when someone doesn't. In the sense of, that is the normal reaction, and it is an unfortunate reaction, but it's not something to be shamed. But that's a discussion for a different day. A discussion we will not be having. But that, I think, is so impressive. And if you know what they've been through, I think that is such a beautiful part of a love letter to be able to write to someone. And that sticks with someone. Because, I mean, Freud will tell you, and every other psychologist, but childhood matters. And the fact that they could rewrite the meaning of horrible things is so beautiful, and the fact that you can see that is even more beautiful. Now, closing statement. He wrote horror. He was a good man. From the information I've gathered, okay? What I find really interesting is, and this has been an idea I've had in my mind for a while, and he's kind of a good poster child for the idea, which is you can dare greater with words if you dare less with actions. What does that mean? He could really explore horror and grotesque and these like really dark things because he wasn't. Not in the way that someone who is really horrible is, you know what I mean? And I think the best writing about horrible things is through the lens of people who are great, because they get to see it in its entirety and hopefully judge it in a really interesting way. And so if you are a writer and you are trying to like play it safe and you're like, I don't want to explore that topic, I don't want to explore that topic, I absolutely get it. But I think the best writing is from great people who explore horrible topics, because those topics need to be dealt with. And what better than a great person to have them deal with that? And yes, he wrote horror, and yes, I think he wrote like not just humans, but also weird creatures. But I think those are metaphors. Don't forget to check out my books, they're about to come up. And also, if you were writing a love letter, put it in the comments if you want my notes on it, if you want me to ask extra questions, if you have any questions. And also, if you're a fan of his, leave any information about him in the comments. Okay, let's talk about this. I loved the video I made, not that I made it, but I'll tell you what I loved about it. The one where I said, in defense of racist writers. I loved the comment section. It genuinely felt like a group chat, because someone was like, I'm gonna butt in and I'm gonna add things and this and that, and it was such a fun comment section. So, and I've had this multiple times now also with the clip from Goethe and other things. If you know any writers, you can obviously recommend me some that I should go through. Also, if you have any information about them, leave it in the comments. I think it's so cool when it feels like a little intellectual group chat. Bye. Are you a question or an answer? The fools who think to stand alone with an idea is scary are the same that see comfort in the majority. But if the majority was right, no one would write. No one would think to raise a pencil to each of the new empty papers. Nobody would want to turn paper into pages. Because the peace a writer searches for in a blank page would be found in the world. The discussion of right or wrong is subjective, yet, most of the time, the ideas we love would fade away as quickly as everybody else. We love to be loved, but don't love to be questioned. Yet, wouldn't you rather be a question everybody answers differently than an answer nobody knows? They might never see you, and you might never see them. They might never see you. They might never hear the disappointment in your silence. They might never know the sentences you want to say but don't, in fear of sounding like a broken record. They might never see all the insecurities you don't point out to them because you're scared they will stand out to them now too. They might never see the small changes in your pupils when you look at them, because they never see your eyes when you don't look at them. They might never see you outside of the context of them. They might never hear the small sighs in the morning when you start another day trying to be better, but being pretty sure you will fail. They will never hear the songs you skip because they make you too emotional. They will never hear all the things you think are so clear, but you never said to them. You might go through life hearing different reviews of the series of books which is your life, none true, but some quite inventative and far-fetched. You might never be seen or heard the way you crave to be. But maybe you will. And that maybe makes it exciting. That small string of maybes might hold you up. It is what makes you go out on yet another date you hate, to get dressed, to get someone outside of their home to try to talk. The small maybe is what we live for. The small maybes of life. Maybe I'll run into the love of my life. Maybe the career I love will love me back. Maybe this life is worth another try, she says, with a small but sharp sigh. So quiet that only another maybe could hear it. And maybe someday the two maybes turn their sighs into laughter and their ears into their most used part themselves. Who knows? Maybe. Even horrible things have to start. What's the point of trying if all I do is wrong? He thinks the second part of the sentence, why am I guilty until proven innocent? I am a New York journalist. My birthday is on the 24th of December 1994. I just turned 30. It's Christmas and I'm alone in all the ways a soul can be and a body cannot be. I am 1 meter 95, 58 centimeters. Or in feet, that's 6 feet 5 inches. I know I shouldn't be so exact. And to be honest, I'm not even such a numbers guy. But that's partially how the world has defined me. And since it's one of the few positive traits I get complimented on, I keep it close. Like a lonely woman and her Birkin. I swear I'm not as shallow as I sound, he says to his date, Annabelle, who clearly is just as annoyed at life as he is. They both do the first date angry tango. They both thought at least twice, well, you seem nice. Why are you still single? But what they actually ended up saying was, what do you bring to the table? He says. His date replies, nothing. We are at a restaurant, so last I checked, that's the waiter's job. Then she fell into a laugh so deep you would have thought she was a comedian who just hit a comedic home run. That was the first page and one sentence of the second page of my fiction book. It's called The Great Souls Disconnect. If you also just look up my name, Anna Cobbler, I will put it here how to type it. Also, it's my username. You can check it out on Amazon. It's available on Kindle and hardcover. Look at this cover. I hope you enjoyed those trailers of my books, and if you want to read on, order them on Amazon. Everything is linked in the description, always. And you can also always look it up under my name, Anna Cobbler. Thanks.